call this meeting to order. Please rise for the invocation. O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance, stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. The Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, I just wanted to mention that Mrs. Ritchie will not be with us today. And now we have item 2.03, approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Second. All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0-0. Item 2.04, the next item is to establish the agenda order, and the agenda stands as published. Item 2.05, recognitions. We do not have any board recognitions today. And item 2.06, educator of the month, Ms. Chaudhry.
Today we honor an educator in our school system who works in a flexible environment, collaborating with staff, teaching skills to students and colleagues, and maintaining the holdings of the school media center. Paula Hendry Borinsky, Library Media Specialist at Tyler Heights Elementary School, is a leader, an educational partner, an information specialist, and a teacher. Strong leaders foster a learning environment of creativity and innovation. Paula used her creative and innovative skills to create the Parent Toddler University, where she uses her planning time to interact with toddlers in the neighborhood. In addition, she writes grants for students to attend Earth Camp over the summer, purchase books, and create Earth Day activities. As an instructional partner, Ms. Borinsky works with teachers to reinforce units studied in class by creating research projects in the Media Center. She also enhances students' classrooms instruction by exposing them to technology and the World Wide Web. Paula Borinsky is the information specialist at Tyler Heights. She informs students and staff of available technology and media outlets and assists with its integration in the classroom. She assembles collections of media that support each grade's curriculum while keeping in mind cultural diversity at Tyler Heights. As a teacher, Paula empowers her students to become critical thinkers and enthusiastic readers. She supports students' success by guiding her students in reading for understanding, using information for specific purposes, and building on prior knowledge while constructing new knowledge. Ms. Borinsky is a proactive in the realm of fundraising in support of her students and her school. She knows that there are available funds to be had through the use of grant writing, and she spends many hours doing just that. Whether it is for student scholarships to attend Earth Camp or promoting Accelerated Reader, she is always looking for more ways to support her school. She also organizes the school book fair twice a year, which can be quite an undertaking, but she enjoys doing it and enjoys seeing the benefits it reaps. Paula Borinsky not only has a great working relationship with her students and colleagues, but she also spends time building relationships with parents and community partnerships through organizing game night at the school, at the local library, and her bookmobile. So for these reasons and more, the Board of Education is pleased to recognize Paula Hendry Borinsky as Educator of the Month for December 2014. Ms. Borinsky, thank you for all you do each day in support of our students, teachers, and parents at Tyler Heights Elementary School, and please join me up front.
They totally lied and deceived me. They told me that I was supposed to come talk about Parent Toddler University and our book cycle. And I thought, yeah, they're going to fool somebody about this Employee of the Month thing. I didn't realize it was me till about a minute. My husband is here. My media assistant, Patty Curtis, is here. My coordinator, Kathy Gillette, is here. My principal, Karen Walkinshaw, is here. And those sneaky people in the back row are Kathy Metzger and Kim Stanger, Jackie Munoz, who's one of the 6 people that shares my office at Tyler Heights, and Marvine Sharps.
Well, that's quite a crowd.
Oh, well, she's retired. That's Misha Callahan, who still drives me crazy. Thank you very much.
Ms. Berinsky, I wanted to remind you or ask that you just stay until after the CAC report. We're going to take some pictures. Thank you. Teresa Burge, Employee of the Month.
Thank you. If you ask folks at Bates Middle School and Annapolis Middle School to describe our Employee of the Month in one word, their answer would be lifeline. And that she is, because Monica Lopez has the important job of facilitating communication between home and school for over 400 families who speak Spanish. Not only does she handle the day-to-day communication with Hispanic families at both middle schools, she responds to numerous crises involving student safety and health. She is well known in the Annapolis area and is considered the go-to person for the pulse of the Hispanic community. Monica has been a bilingual facilitator for 8 years and is always willing to train new employees entering her field. She readily shares document translations, advice on how to juggle the workload, and shares information about community resources and more. With students and parents, she always goes that extra mile. She knows how to gauge where families are at in terms of their level of acculturation and need, and provides just the right amount of hand-holding until they can handle that particular task on their own. Perhaps nowhere is Monica's commitment to excellence exemplified more than in her willingness to assist the school system's communication office with the translation of automated notification messages to families. She has recorded Spanish versions of all of the system's weather-related closing messages, attendance messages, and other key messages. So you're the Spanish version of Bob? Right. Okay. In addition, on a moment's notice, sometimes late at night or on a weekend, Monica makes herself available to translate and record messages. Her work is invaluable and critical to families in whose homes the spoken language is Spanish. Because of Monica Lopez, we are able to reach 5,000 families system-wide with information that is crucial to the academic success and well-being of their children. People who know Monica say that she is a joy to be around. She is a real team player, but works independently as well. She always injects humor into a difficult situation. Monica is extremely reliable. In the words of her supervisor, "I know I can get quick input from her on anything, no matter the time of day." Monica has perfected the art of managing up and consistently provides me with information needed to best meet the needs of international families in the county. Monica Lopez, you play a critical part in the success of the AACPS Spanish-speaking students and the Hispanic community as a whole. You have raised the bar in our school system, and you continue to raise it each day. So on behalf of the Board of Education, the students, teachers, and staff of Anne Arundel County Public Schools, congratulations on being recognized as Employee of the Month for December 2014, and thank you for being our lifeline for the Hispanic community. Please join me up front. So I have for you a certificate of appreciation and a bell with your name on it. And I have to ask you, Monica, how did they get you here today?
They lied to me.
It's a common story we hear.
So I I get an email from my supervisor, Laura Gardner, and tells me that Bob and Teresa wanted me here at the board meeting in case they had any questions about Parent Connect or Connected in Spanish. And they made sure that I came. You need to be here at this time. I said, okay, I'm coming.
Because you're a very good employee.
Right. And then my other co-workers from the International Student Services Office, they're like, oh, we're going too, so we can all go together. We'll make sure we get there on time. Okay. So of course I came innocently knowing that, okay, I'm going to have to talk in front of the board.
And here you are.
And here I am talking in front of the board.
Okay, and so it looks like you have quite a big
All
crowd here with you.
These are all my bilingual facilitator co-workers, my principal, Mr. Duru, one of my principals, my supervisor, Teresa Tudor.
And
These are all I work in the International Student Services Office. Work in that office with Gracie Williams, Eva Poole, Taina Compagnie, and then my co-workers, Tony, Dilha, Karen, Zeep, Marina, Hilda, Sandra, Mawish, which I haven't met, and Grace. And I see Angela in the back, and so is Jackie, and Misha, because I can't forget Misha, because we can't let her retire.
and thank you for everything that you do for our kids and everything all of you do for our kids. It's really important. So thank you so much.
Thank you
and
very much.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Item 2.08, Volunteer of the Month, Mrs. Nally.
Thank you. 72 Career Day speakers scheduled. Over 2,000 donated canned goods items boxed up for the food bank pickup. 500 Grandparents' Day guests. These are just a few of last year's statistics shared by school counselor Barb Holcomb about her volunteers' accomplishments at Point Pleasant Elementary. We're happy to report that this wonderful volunteer is back this fall, contributing her time and talents to Point Pleasant for a 6th school year. Today, the Board of Education is pleased to honor Mrs. Rochelle Matheson. Mrs. Holcomb writes that Rochelle turns her caring to action with dedication and consistency. I confidently leave certain tasks to her, knowing she'll efficiently complete them. As a result, it's a huge relief to have more time for my students. It's difficult to name a Point Pleasant event over the past 5 years that hasn't included Rochelle. Again this year, she oversaw the collection, organization, and delivery of Harvest for the Hungry Food donations, a record-breaking 2,300 items, to the Anne Arundel County Food Bank. At Back to School Night, Rochelle helped distribute school supplies and was on board with the book fair just a few weeks ago. Mrs. Madison is at her best when she's helping others. In November, she personally ensured delivery of Thanksgiving food baskets donated by the organization serving people across neighborhoods to 10 Point Pleasant families. For the mentoring program, Rochelle persuaded a local business to donate specially designed T-shirts. The result, a renewed sense of unity and belonging for the boys and their mentors. Last year, Rochelle and Ms. Holcomb co-planned the Point Pleasant Career Day, scheduling 3 presenters for all 24 classrooms. Rochelle gathered an enthusiastic team of volunteers who staffed food and activity tables for more than 500 Grandparents' Day guests, the highest attendance ever. Mrs. Matheson is always willing to help the Point Pleasant staff in any way she can, writes 2nd grade teacher Tammy Benugit. Seeing her smiling face around the school always brightens my day. Assistant Principal Jennifer Rieger regularly observes Rochelle volunteering in many ways, working on showcases, PTA fundraisers, making copies, laminating or cutting out, or delivering materials to the classroom. Regardless of the task, Mrs. Matheson steps up with a ready and willing attitude. We're very lucky to have such a dedicated, big-hearted volunteer. Mrs. Matheson, would you please come forward? With great appreciation, I would like to present this Volunteer of the Month certificate and bell to you. Who do you have with you today?
My family and Barb, who's just a mess.
And how did they get you here?
She told me it was for my son.
Is your son here?
Yeah, he's here.
Oh, stand up, son.
He is.
Oh, there he is. Hi. Oh, there. Well, I want to present you with this certificate and with this bell, and thank you so much for your service. We really appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to welcome County Executive Steve Shue to the audience today. Thank you for coming. And we will now move on to school and community highlights. Mrs. Nally.
Excuse me, I was not at the last board meeting, so I want to take this opportunity to thank Emily Brandenburg for her service. Emily, she worked so hard on our board as head of the budget committee, economic and really spearheaded the economic impact study. Emily has left our board to serve County Executive Shue, and so I'm thrilled that we will be continuing to work together. But I want to thank you so much. I will miss you on the board.
I just had a couple of updates. We had a wonderful state championship football game on Friday. Unfortunately, the score was just, I guess, 4 points shy of the win, but it was a wonderful time, and to see the guys out there at the Raven Stadium was a thrill for me. We also, Dr. Olato and I also went to the Integrated Community Stakeholders Team meeting on Friday. That's the signature program, gathering of the signature program folks. And then yesterday, I had the honor of judging the science fair at Arundel Middle School.
I have one more.
Mrs. Nally.
I want to thank County Executive Shue for asking me to serve on the Education Liaison Committee. We met last night with a great number of people, and it was a really successful beginning, and I think the direction of our collaboration with County Executive Shue is impressive. The people that he's gathered together to seek input for not only our education system, but also for the county library system and for the community colleges is very impressive, and thank you.
Item 2.10, the CAC report.
Good morning, Dr. Arlato, President Korbalek, and members of the board. I'm Lisa Shore, Vice Chair of the Citizens Advisory Committee, and I'd like to update you on our CAC activities over the past month. Our meeting minutes and agendas are available online on the AACPS website under the Community header and the CAC tab if you'd like more details on our activities and our actions. We'd like to thank board members Mr. Jackson and Mr. Webb for attending our last meeting on December 1st. We appreciate the support of the board and are honored to be a community voice and a partner in the mission to support quality educational opportunities for all kids. We're a large and diverse group with 2 representatives from each of the 12 school clusters, 1 elementary level and 1 secondary level, the Anne Arundel County Council of PTAs, the military, the Special Education Citizens Advisory Committee, and the Parent Involvement Advisory Committee. To focus our efforts this year, we divided into 4 committees. The Costs Committee is exploring out-of-pocket education expenses for families in Anne Arundel County. The Class Rankings Committee is working with the school system's executive team to make sure that the ranking system is equitable and relevant. The Communications Committee is collaborating with the Public Information Office to support their efforts and to provide creative input and suggestions. In fact, Bob Mosier gave an excellent presentation at our last CAC meeting. His presentation helped us understand the many strategies that his office uses to communicate and sparked many ideas and very rich and robust discussion. The Equity Committee has met several times with Anthony Alston and the staff in the Office of Equity and Accelerated Student Achievement. We especially appreciate the support of John Panitz from Mr. Alston's office, who meets with us monthly and updates us on the office's initiatives. We've had very collaborative discussions with him about how to engage the community and how we can help. Our next CAC meeting is scheduled for Monday, February 2nd, 2015, at 7 p.m. here in the boardroom. Please feel free to join us or provide us with issues that you would like us to explore. We are ready and willing to help. We look forward to staying engaged and to having a productive and collaborative year. Thank you for your support as we work together for the benefit of students, staff, and the community.
Thank you. We're going to take a 10-minute break for photos for the Educator, Employee, and Volunteer of the Month out in the hall. Okay, our next item is 3.01, the superintendent's recommended fiscal year 2016 operating and capital budgets. And this is an information item, and we're going to turn it over to Dr. Arlotto.
Thank you. President Korbelak, Vice President Nally, members of the board, thank you. Thank you for allowing me the privilege of working together with you as we forge new paths of access, equity, and excellence for our school system and our county. Thank you for giving me the honor of continuing to work alongside the incredible teachers, administrators, secretaries, custodians, support staff, and other employees who go to great lengths most people will never see in the pursuit of educational excellence. And most importantly, thank you for entrusting me with the responsibility of leading nearly 80,000 students who enter our schools every day. To walk into a school, any school, and see their smiling, eager faces and inquiring young minds at work is to draw inspiration in its purest form. I know you have seen that too, and it is just awesome. I want to acknowledge County Executive Steve Shue, who's joined us this morning. This may be the first time a sitting county executive has attended the superintendent's budget presentation, and I appreciate Mr. Shue being here as we embark on this road together. Thank you. Education, ladies and gentlemen, is no easy profession, and it is not for the faint of heart. The work that we do every day, however, changes young lives and sets the course for our collective future. As I have seen that incredible work through the many different lenses in my 9 years here, and the last 5 months as superintendent have provided yet another enriching optic as to how exactly we are going about the business of both creating and changing the future. From world and classical language camps in the summer that entice students to expand their linguistic and cultural horizons, to invigorating science experiments in an elementary classroom on the first day of school, to internships at hundreds of businesses throughout the county via magnet and non-magnet programs, our students are being engaged and challenged like never before in the quest to heighten their curiosity and propel them forward. From the student government activities that provide hands-on experience with leadership and governance, to the AVID student leadership conferences, to the launch of our Triple E initiative in 8 elementary schools and an early childhood center in the North County cluster, we are fueling the inquisitiveness within each young mind and instilling in our students a sense of pride and accomplishment in their work. We are, to be sure, leading our students to a place where we want them to be. But we are also encouraging them to harness their internal power, to seize their own potential, and begin to chart their own noble course. From one end of the county to the other, from national blue ribbon schools like Lithicum Elementary to international baccalaureate programs at every grade level, to cutting-edge STEM instruction for our youngest learners at schools like Park and Woodside Elementaries, to underwater robotics programs at schools like Shadyside Elementary and agricultural education courses at Southern High School, there is real magic happening in our classrooms. We aren't the only ones taking notice either. About an hour ago, the Maryland State Department of Education announced this year's class of 6 Maryland Blue Ribbon schools. Among them are Lakeshore and Severna Park Elementary schools. And I am very proud to tell you that we are the only school system in the state with 2 winners this year. The great things are happening because we have people who ply their trade not just with incredible skill, but with grace, passion, dedication, and humor. People like Christina Haustian of Broadneck High School, our current Teacher of the Year, who inspires students and colleagues alike with compassionate dialogue aimed at creating a sense of civic conscience, not just with regard to the subject at hand, but with causes like Relay for Life, the Polar Bear Plunge, and Harvest for the Hungry. People like Andre Dillard, the principal at Georgetown East Elementary School, whose involvement with children extends far beyond the walls of the building and the confines of the school day. In addition to running a 375-student school, Andre is the Director of Educational Activities for the Eta Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity in Annapolis. His work includes involvement in a number of mentoring and support programs that help children, particularly young men of color, acquire the skills necessary for success and provide them with role models to look up to and emulate. People like Gus Gambrell, the chief custodian at Manor View Elementary School, who leads a team whose work often goes unnoticed, but is crucial to creating conducive learning environments in which children can thrive. The work of Gus and his team was recognized several years ago when Manor View received a governor's citation for superior maintenance. People like Monica Lopez, a bilingual facilitator for the last 8 years, who the board honored earlier this morning as its Employee of the Month. Monica provides an absolutely critical link between home and school for members of our burgeoning Hispanic population. She and her colleagues are more than just valuable resources to these students and their families. They are lifelines who translate documents, interpret key information at meetings, and put parents in touch with governmental and community organizations so that they can be in a better position to help and support and educate their children. And people like Joanna Espy, the technology support technician at Old Mill High School, whose technology expertise pays huge dividends in terms of helping teachers enhance instruction for students. In the last 7 years, the number of devices in our schools has more than doubled as we migrate from technology-assisted to technology-infused instruction. The work of Joanna and her colleagues is essential to our mission. In addition to our employees, we are so fortunate to have the support of incredible parents and community partners. They include people like Allison Pickard, who began volunteering in 2011 at Oakwood Elementary School. She soon became the PTA president there and helped to develop partnerships with Lowe's, Evergreen Jeans, and Abundant Life Church. Allison continues to serve in a variety of roles today and is one of nearly 20,000 volunteers who donated a combined 507,000 hours to our schools and students last year. As I said when I was appointed this position, the number one reason I applied for the job was the people. We are first and foremost a system about people. 82% of our operating budget goes to personnel costs, and if we don't have quality people, the right people, in the right places for our children, ladies and gentlemen, what happens in the other 18% of our organization isn't going to move our outcomes very far at all. We are indeed very fortunate to be surrounded every day by employees, parents, volunteers, and elected officials who, despite the constraints, continually rise above the challenges to meet and exceed expectations. Those challenges, however, are growing. We are nurturing a wider array of young minds than ever before, and those minds come with more expansive learning styles and needs that we must address if we are to achieve the single goal of our strategic plan: to ensure that every student meets or exceeds standards and that the achievement gaps are eliminated. Over the last 6 years, the number of students receiving free and reduced price meals has grown by 59%. Today, more than 3 in 10 of our students receive federal assistance for meals. That's nearly 10,000 students more than 6 years ago whose families need help to meet basic needs. Over the same time period, our student population has grown by just under 8%, while the number of English language learners we educate has more than doubled. We have over 2,000 more students in our ELL programs today than we did 6 years ago, and we are charged with not only teaching them math, science, and social studies, but with helping them acquire basic language and socialization skills that form the cornerstone of future learning. Ladies and gentlemen, these are many of our children in the gap. They are the students who need additional services, assistance, and support to be successful, and they deserve every bit as much of our effort and attention as any other child. Our work must begin by getting children to believe that they are capable of success and that their work has value. That's the emphasis of the Room 203 Challenge adopted and launched by our Office of Equity and Accelerated Student Achievement this year. The challenge's name comes from the popular book and film Freedom Writers, which is based on the true story of a teacher who inspired a group of disenchanted, defeated students with diverse and challenging backgrounds to believe in themselves and their ability to achieve academic success. For us, Room 203 symbolizes the idea that no one will care how much you know until they know how much you care. It is genuine and heartfelt relationships that lead students of all backgrounds, interests, and abilities to a place where they feel fully valued. It is in that value, ladies and gentlemen, that we inspire students to excel. There are those who view and say we should view our school system purely as a business with a bottom-line ideology that looks at singular measures of productivity and output and leaves those that don't meet standards on the outside looking in. To do so, however, betrays the fundamental mission of education: to empower all young minds, not just to see and understand the future, but to grasp it firmly in their hands and ride the promise of their potential to success. We are not, to borrow a line from a colleague, building widgets. We are nurturing and building children, all children. The contrast of business and educational theory is best summarized, I think, in a story found in a recent book by educational activist Diane Ravitch. Allow me to paraphrase. An ice cream company executive was speaking to a group of Indiana educators, telling them they needed to operate more like his company. If I ran my business the way you people operate your schools, I wouldn't be in business for long, he told the teachers. Not surprisingly, the teachers reacted with sullen hostility. When he finished his speech, a teacher innocently asked about his company's method of making the best blueberry ice cream. He boasted of its super premium ingredients, nothing but the best. Then the teacher asked this question of the businessman. When you're standing on your receiving dock and you see an inferior shipment of blueberries arrive, what do? I send them back, he replied. The teacher jumped to her feet. That's right, she shouted, and we can never send back our blueberries. We take them big, small, rich, and poor, gifted, exceptional, abused, and frightened, confident, homeless, rude, and brilliant. We take them with ADHD, junior rheumatoid arthritis, and English as their second language. We take them all, every one, and that is why it's not a business. It's a school. Our business, of course, is not about blueberries. Our business is about the heartbeats of children, and those heartbeats are wrapped in skins of all colors. Our children come in all shapes and sizes with needs we know well and ones we are just learning. From backgrounds with which we are familiar and others we can't even imagine. We serve a far higher purpose than to just crank out a product. That purpose, ladies and gentlemen, is the children who constitute the future of our neighborhoods, county, state, and nation. It's not to say that we shouldn't be business savvy. We are and have been. Our school system offers every resident in our county an incredible return on their investment. A study commissioned by this board last year quantified it well. Every graduating class we produce, just over 5,100 students last year, adds at least $1.8 billion to the local economy over the course of their lifetimes. Those graduates will generate $26 million in additional county tax revenue and save the county $345 million in public costs related to health care, crime, and welfare. Our school system, quite simply, provides an extraordinary value to the residents of this county. I tell you emphatically that we are a sound investment that reaps huge economic, financial, and social dividends for every business and every resident, whether they have children in our schools or not. I am proud to also say that we are efficient stewards of the taxpayer funds provided to us by the county and state. On the business side of our operation, the strategic merger of our prescription drug and healthcare contracts will save our school system millions of dollars through volume-based discounts. The comprehensive dependent claims audit that we undertook last year ensures that only rightful dependents of employees are covered by healthcare benefits. Our rigorous claims payment audit, now underway, is verifying that no double billing or overlapping payments are occurring. Both efforts are designed to provide evidence of fiscal integrity and corporate responsibility. Even something as simple as lighting offers an avenue for savings. As we go about upgrading the lighting in our school gymnasiums, we are using more energy-efficient fixtures and bulbs, as well as capitalizing on available utility rebates. As a result, we are breaking even on the cost of these lights after about 7 months and realizing savings for the life of the fixtures after that. While the expansion of programs to meet the needs of our children, who will one day be leading the global workforce, often requires additional funding, we must be, and have been, able to shift money internally to better utilize it to get to where we want to go. Instead of requesting additional funding, we have redirected more than $400,000 from across our school system as we continue to design and enhance classroom lessons aligned with the new PARCC assessments. This move also allows for extensive professional development to prepare teachers to deliver that robust curriculum. We conducted an exhaustive top-to-bottom examination of our Department of Curriculum and Instruction. That thorough analysis allowed us to repurpose more than $850,000 to better support students, part of more than $14.7 million we reallocated across the system. That's additional money we don't have to request from the public through this budget. We looked internally as well to launch the Pilot EEE initiative earlier this year. This program not only provides students with additional rigorous and relevant programmatic offerings at 9 schools, it also provides teachers in those schools with essential additional planning time they previously did not have at the elementary level. I'm pleased to tell you that the early results on this program have been tremendous, and we'll be arranging some visits after the first of the year so that you and our elected officials can see this outstanding work for yourselves. We must be cognizant, however, of the fact that the rubber band only stretches so far. 7 years of minimum level county funding coupled with rising enrollments, standards, and accountability mandates have taken a toll. The fact is that our ability to help students reach the places we want them to be and continue to attract the talent necessary to make that happen will be diminished if we continue to settle for the floor instead of reaching for the ceiling. The challenges exist across our system. School secretaries, for example, staff nearly 145 positions below appropriate levels. Our custodians are asked to clean about 27,000 square feet of building space on a daily basis, 35 to 50% more than required in other counties. Since 2010, we have increased our overall square footage by 829,000 square feet without adding any new custodial positions. When it comes to facilities, our much-discussed infrastructure backlog has reached $2 billion. While we must be forthright about the impact that funding constraints since 2008 have had on our school system, it does us no good to focus solely on the past. We must recognize where we are and chart the course ahead. We could talk for days about bygone battles with the county over funding, but it would not move our cause forward one single step. What we need is not discord, but dialogue, and a mutual and fundamental belief that together we can make education in Anne Arundel County second to none. I'd pose the same question that Robert Kennedy did years ago. He said, "There are those who look at things the way they are and ask why. I dream of things that never were and ask why not." It is time, ladies and gentlemen, to talk about how we can, not why we can't. I've had the chance to sit down with Mr. Hsu, and we've had some great conversation. I believe he is as committed to this mindset as I am. My hope is that our children and our county reap the benefits of our collaboration. My review of the recommendations from department heads in preparing this budget has been both exhaustive and exhilarating. In each of the thousands of lines, I have seen the faces of children. Every dollar we spend impacts a child in some way. The $1.1 billion operating budget I recommend to this board is 3.6%, or just under $39 million more than the current year's adjusted budget. Could I make the case for needing more funding in this request? Absolutely. I would very much like to add secretarial and custodial positions, for instance. However, finite resources dictate tough choices, and we must be prudent and reasonable. I believe this budget is evidence that we are both. It contains $11.8 million placeholder for employee compensation increases, which will be finalized when we conclude negotiations with all of our bargaining units. As I've said before, it is our people that will propel us forward. Department and division heads presented me with nearly $35 million in proposed program enhancements this year, and I could make a great case for every single one of them. However, we've had to make difficult decisions, and I cut the list down to $10 million. Nearly 70% of these requests are focused on 4 key areas that I believe will help us move the needle forward in terms of student achievement. Classroom teachers to address increased enrollment, early literacy, elementary education, and the needs of our English language learners. This, ladies and gentlemen, is where we must focus our efforts to close the gaps that exist. This budget recommendation contains $2.4 million for 33 teaching positions to partially address enrollment growth. We have nearly 6,000 more students in our classrooms today than we did 6 years ago. If we are serious about continued growth in class size, it is imperative that we add teachers to do so. I'm also requesting $2.5 million to launch the EEE program in all 19 elementary schools in the Chesapeake, Meade, and Southern clusters, in addition to the program already in place in the North County cluster. This expansion will bring enhanced instruction to nearly 12,000 elementary students next year and provide critical planning time for more than 500 teachers. $1 million is allocated to additional early literacy programs to help get children up to grade level at an earlier age by providing increased teaching services to children in our birth to age 5 programs and expanding our pre-kindergarten programs. This includes 12 additional classroom and assistant positions, and while the sites have not yet been finalized, potential locations include Crofton Meadows, Lakeshore, Nantucket, Overlook, Odenton, Richard Henry Lee, Riviera Beach, and Severn elementary schools. This will enable us to provide additional service to another 240 youngsters across the county. I'm also requesting $850,000 to add 8 English language acquisition teachers to classrooms across the county, 2 employees in our International Student Service Office, and 3 bilingual facilitators to assist the growing number of non-English speaking families in our system. These resources help many students who have experienced interrupted educations and are behind in their studies. For example, we had 15 over age 9th graders in our ELL programs in 2010. Today, there are more than 100. When it comes to our magnet programs, we must continue to develop rigorous and relevant curricula that prepare students for cutting-edge careers in a global workforce. This budget includes $1 million to continue expansion of the STEM middle school magnet programs at Old Mill Middle School South and Lindale Middle School, and launch our 3rd STEM middle school magnet program at Central Middle School next year. My recommendation also contains $739,000 to purchase automated bus routing software and hire an analyst to implement a program that we plan to run alongside our current transportation system during the upcoming school year. This will enable us to identify any areas where we can create more efficient bus routes and allow us to examine additional options with regard to school start times. I believe that this is a practical first step that will yield valuable information as we continue the discussion of later school start times. Additionally, I am requesting $4 million to strengthen our healthcare fund and $3.8 million to address needs of our charter and contract program. Providing quality curriculum instruction is but a part of the path to educational excellence. Our children must be educated in up-to-date facilities, and this board knows well that we have a long way to go in that regard. The $163.1 million capital budget recommendation I submit to you today contains funding for comprehensive renovation projects at 9 schools and continues funding for pre-kindergarten and kindergarten additions, as well as open space classroom enclosures. There is more than $100 million allocated to construction projects at Severna Park High School and Rolling Knolls, Benfield, West Annapolis Elementary Schools, and design work for Manorview, High Point, Cromwell, Jessup, and Arnold Elementary Schools. There is also $11 million for pre-kindergarten and kindergarten additions at Eastport and Georgetown East Elementary Schools, as well as at West Mead Early Education Center. $6 million from gymnasium additions at Millersville and Woodside Elementary Schools, and $5 million for open space classroom enclosures at Glen Burnie High School. Ladies and gentlemen, every day in our class, our students face challenges. Some of them are pretty steep. It is our collective duty to lift our children up, equip them for success, and propel them forward. It is our duty, if you will, to eliminate all students and elevate all students and eliminate all gaps. We must do it through passion, support, and creativity, and through access, equity, and excellence. And we, school system, county government, state government, parents, students, community, and business partners must do it together. We all have critical roles to play. The path will not always be easy, but the achievement of our children is the priceless prize we must relentlessly pursue every day. Thank you.
Do we have any board questions or comments on the budget? I would just like to thank you, Dr. Arletto, for you and your team. I think you've put together and crafted a sound and thoughtful and conservative budget. And as Ms. Brandenburg and I like to say last year when we were doing presentations before the County Council and the Anne Arundel delegation, we are Anne Arundel County. And we look forward to working with our new county executive and our new county council to fund a budget that will allow AACPS to provide a world-class education to the students of this county. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Korbelak and members of the board. I do also want to extend to Mr. Hsu and your team. I appreciate the collaboration. It's how it started, and my commitment to you, to the residents of the county, that we'll work together. We'll have our differences, no doubt about it, but if we're not having the conversations like we've had so far, we're never going to move the system forward. And so I appreciate that. I also want to thank this team off to my right. Creating a budget is not an easy task. There's a lot of gnashing of teeth. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, literally. And I want to thank the team, everybody included. So thank you all very much.
We're going to move on to public participation. Anyone wishing to speak on an item not on today's agenda may offer testimony during the public comment portion of the meeting. Speakers will be allotted 3 minutes each, and the board asks that comments remain civil and appropriate for the various audiences that may be watching or viewing this meeting. The student-specific and personnel matters are confidential and cannot be discussed in this forum. This time is intended for speakers to voice their opinion and not necessarily as a question and answer period. Speakers may pose questions, but answers will be counted toward the 3-minute allotment. For the record, please give your name before speaking, and handouts should be given to our board assistant. I have 3 completed cards for the public participation portion, Errol Brown Sr., Carrie Oakes, and Jonathan Boniface. Mr. Brown?
Thank you. Good morning, Superintendent. Good morning, President, and good morning, board members. My name is Errol E. Brown, and I'm the senior. And I would be remiss if I didn't tell you here this morning that I am a product of the Anne Arundel County Board of Education. Very proud product, to be exact. My first school was Parole Elementary School, which is undergoing renovations at the time, although the project is behind schedule. We fully approve of turning the school around, the front to the rear and the rear to the front. We opened that school in 1952. Also a graduate of the Wiley H. Bates High School, class of 1962, celebrated our 50th anniversary. We renovated that school now, and it's doing wonderful things. I wouldn't be here today, or who I am today, if it wasn't for those teachers of the Anne Arundel County Board of Education. So I'm a living witness, and I'm here today to tell you that the system works. Although I was in a different system at that time, we all know what it was like back then. For some of you younger ones, you may not. But we still believed in one thing, or shall we say those teachers believed in one thing, and that was excellence. And those school teachers, if you don't do it right, they make you do it over again. And I was one of those that had to do it over again, but it only took one time. It never happened again. I rise here this morning to talk with you about the Philip and Rachel Brown Board of Education building on Green Street. As you know, we had the pre-dedication back during the summer, and we were looking to have a rededication of that to the Philip and Rachel Brown once we have all the memorabilia put up. I have supplied memorabilia from the Philip and Rachel Brown collection that spans over 100 years. Diplomas from the Anne Arundel County Board of Education, 1924 and 1926, signed by Dr. Fox. These things have all been pretty much so have been framed by myself, and monies came out of my pocket to do it. A lot of the memorabilia has been framed. Some of it still needs to be framed. And we're looking to see to it that this happens, hopefully by Black History Month, February, so that we may have a rededication. For that, we have to make sure that we have a small amount of funding to redo that, and that everyone is on the same page with that, and that we can do it and have it done so that it would enhance that building. The building, we found out, is not on the National Record for Historic Places, which it really should be, because it will only enhance the Board of Education. Also, too, the Annapolis Historic Foundation puts a plaque on that building, which it is eligible to be. And so we're asking that these things be brought to fruition and so that they can be done. Again, thank you for having me this morning, and thank you for the opportunity for speaking.
Thank you. Are you speaking for Carrie? Yeah. Okay. I have you next.
My name is Danielle Brooks. Good morning. I am the parent of 3 children, 4, 7, and 16. And I just want to add some remarks about the Start School Later initiative and survey. And I really just don't know which is more exciting, the news that more than 2/3 of the respondents to your survey supported starting high school later, or including more than 70%, which includes more than 70% of parents and students, and the majority of AACPS employees. Or that the county executive, Steve Shue, has stated that this is one of his budget priorities for the next year. I'm a little disappointed to see that Dr. Arlotto has decided to include funding for the routing software next year and not for the implementation of a change in start time for the upcoming year. I'd like to, I'm a little nervous, sorry, with the over 11% drop in diesel fuel prices since January that we're experiencing, surely we can purchase the routing software this year within your existing transportation budget, a process that might be expedited by piggybacking on an existing competitively bid contract of another jurisdiction. I'd like to implore you not to delay further by taking months to create your own request for proposal. Please modify Dr. Arlotto's budget to include funding for a change in start times next school year. Don't force our children to endure another full year of unhealthy, unsafe hours because the bureaucracy can't or won't move fast enough. And thank you for listening to me and all of the parents that are desiring this important health change for our children.
Thank you. Mr. Boniface.
Good morning, President Korbelek, Vice President Nally, Superintendent Arlotto, and members of the board. My name is Jonathan Boniface. Last Thursday, Bill Crofton High School attended the Anne Arundel County Delegation Legislative Priorities Forum. We presented our county's delegates and state senators about the growing need for an additional high school, one primarily needed for Crofton to address the capacity problem in our high schools. This coming session, legislation will be presented during the General Assembly addressing alternative ways to fund the building of new schools, such as a private-public financing. We ask that you please support this upcoming legislation. Last month, AACPS began working on the scope of the new facilities study. We kindly ask you to make sure the feasibility of a Crofton High School be included in the scope, and that it also include the feasibility of making our schools, especially our high schools, smaller. With the addition plan for Meade High School, adding 276 seats, we will have 2 county high schools in the coming years with nearly 2,500 students. This new facility study is a great opportunity to have an outside objective look at making the needed replacement of the old Mill High School into 2 1,300-seat schools. This could, if done properly, set Anne Arundel County schools up for the future and keep our county schools among the best in the nation. Thank you, as always, for all you do for our children. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak during public comment? I don't have any more cards. Okay. Seeing none, we're going to move on to the action items. Item 5.01, administrative personnel appointments. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation, please.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the personnel listed on the attached sheet be promoted and/or appointed.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0-0. Item 5.02, personnel. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend excuse me, that the board approve the actions as stipulated on the attached sheets.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0-0. Item 5.03, superintendent's recommendation on redistricting Annapolis area. This is an information item. Dr. Arlotto, you have a presentation?
Yes, ma'am, we do.
Good morning. For the record, I'm Alex Shaknovich, Chief Operating Officer for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. It's my pleasure to provide a brief overview of item 5.03, which is an information item only for this morning's proceedings regarding the superintendent's recommendation surrounding the Annapolis area. In accordance with board policy JAA, the superintendent is required to submit to the Board of Education by December his recommendations for redistricting. The board then accordingly will review the superintendent's recommendations along with any other board-generated proposals and decide by January which of those proposals to take forward to a public briefing and then public hearings. With respect to the Annapolis area, the superintendent formed a citizen and paneled, citizen-led committee to provide him information and recommendations specific to 3 items. The first one being whether to assign students living on the Naval Academy grounds to a single elementary school, that being either West Annapolis Elementary School or Annapolis Elementary School. Secondly, whether to reassign property fronting Admiral Cochran Drive from the Edgewater Elementary, Central Middle School, South River High School feeder district to the Mills Parole Elementary School, Bates Middle School, Annapolis High School feeder pattern. And finally, options to alleviate, to the extent possible, the overcrowding condition that exists at Tyler Heights Elementary School due to continued enrollment growth in that area. The board has a packet that contains the superintendent's recommendation in it, as well as the recommendation, the formal adopted recommendations of the redistricting committee. Please allow me to go through the superintendent's recommendations this morning. Specifically, the superintendent makes the following recommendations to take effect for the year 2016-2017. With regard to the U.S. Naval Academy properties, to unifying the U.S. Naval Academy properties into a single elementary school, the committee recommended that no redistricting take place at this time and that students continue to attend their respective elementary schools as they do today. The superintendent agreed with the committee's recommendation and therefore is recommending no change to the attendance patterns presently in place as they relate to the U.S. Naval Academy property. Secondly, with regard to redistricting the properties along Admiral Cochran Drive between Riva Road and Solomon's Island Road from the South River feeder attendance zone to the Annapolis High School feeder attendance zone, the committee recommended that no redistricting take place and that students continue to attend the schools at which they are currently geographically assigned. The superintendent agreed with the recommendations of the committee and therefore he is bringing forward no proposals to reassign those students in the affected areas along Admiral Cochran Drive. And finally, with respect to the situation at Tyler Heights, as it encompasses Eastport Elementary Schools and Georgetown East Elementary Schools. In order to provide relief to Tyler Heights Elementary School by utilizing available space and space to be constructed at Eastport and Georgetown East Elementary Schools, the committee submitted a plan to the superintendent, which they coined Option 7. The superintendent gave due consideration to the recommendations and elected to recommend what the committee coined as their option plan or their alternative plan, Option 10. Specifically, it would move the community of the Reserve at Quiet Waters, Neighborhood A, out of Tyler Heights Elementary School and into Georgetown East Elementary School. Secondly, it would move a community known as Harbor House, Neighborhood R, out of Tyler Heights and into Eastport Elementary School. With that, let me take a brief moment to elaborate a little bit further upon the rationale for the superintendent recommending the alternative option or the alternate option that the committee put forward. This is an option, again, that as depicted on the map before you, would move Neighborhood R, Harbor House, to Eastport and move Neighborhood A, the Reserve at Quiet Waters, to Eastport and Georgetown East in the 2016-2017 school year. It is an option that the committee voted for, 7 in favor, 9 opposed, and 3 abstained. So this was the second highest ranked option amongst the 13 or 14 options I believe that the committee went through. In making the recommendation, the superintendent would like to share the following observations and the benefits that he sees with respect to option 10 as it relates or is juxtaposed to option 7. Option 10 allows the additions to be constructed at both Eastport and Georgetown East, to be constructed and outfitted to receive the students, and does not put either Eastport or Georgetown East in an over capacity situation in either 2015 school year or the 2016 school year. It minimizes the impact on the numbers of neighborhoods that would undergo adjustments or reassignments. So the number of neighborhoods and the impact of that number is certainly lessened. It creates a contiguous boundary. Creating contiguous boundaries is important not only philosophically to good planning process, but it also helps us down the road should the recommendation be challenged. It would help us defend our position that contiguous boundaries lend to a geographic attendance zone that is not arbitrarily defined or capriciously intended. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it would allow us the time to not only construct those additions, but there are a lot of other considerations that have to be taken into account. The committee went to great lengths to document the concerns and the particular circumstances at Tyler Heights and some of the recommendations that they put forward, not as part of the formal recommendation regarding redistricting, but ones that the administration there at that school should entertain with respect to how the school is organized. And we want to allow time for not only Tyler Heights, but for the principals and the communities of Tyler Heights and Eastport and Georgetown East to prepare for the receipt of the students, to make sure that the staffing is in place, the professional development is in place, that the appropriate complement of materials, instruction, et cetera, and to allow us the opportunity to conduct that outreach to make sure that all of the communities are aware that this recommendation is coming down the pike in the 2016 school year. We telegraphed at the outset that our intent, quite openly, even in the press, was to identify a solution for the 2016 school year, and option 10 does that. Option 7 would advance a portion of that in the 2015 school year, and we're not sure that everybody is cognizant of that or fully appreciates the ramifications of that. There are some additional complications. This is in the city of Annapolis, not in Anne Arundel County proper, but in the city. And either option 7 or option 10, will require some time for us to work with city officials to make sure that we put in place specific mechanisms and protections for the students, such as crossing guards and some additional sidewalk elements. And this is critical as it relates to neighborhood A, which is again to reserve at Quiet Waters. We would, with the board's approval of option 10, we would engage in dialogue with the City of Annapolis officials and allow them both the time and the planning perspective to, within their budgets and within their construction schedules, et cetera, accommodate the necessary budgets and FTEs to bring those crossing guards on board, to train those crossing guards, and to construct the sidewalks that we mentioned earlier. So it is for those reasons that the superintendent is recommending option 10. Now, let me go over option 7 just to make sure that the board has a clear understanding of the recommendation that was, in fact, numerically put forward as the lead recommendation from the committee. So option 7 would, just like option 10, have still community A, Reserve at Quiet Waters, and community R, Harbor House, be redistricted to Georgetown East and Eastport, as we discussed earlier. However, community A, the Reserve at Quiet Waters, would actually be redistricted in August of 2015 in lieu of August of 2016. That would, in fact, provide sooner relief somewhat to the Tyler Heights community, but it would place the Georgetown East School in an overcapacity situation in the 2015 year. Additionally, option 7 does recommend a number of other neighborhoods being relocated in the 2016 year from Tyler Heights to Georgetown East. Specifically, Community G, known as the Landings, would be redistricted to Georgetown East, as would Community H, known as North Glen, Community I, known as Regent Street, and Community N, known as Tyler Avenue. This was, as I indicated earlier, received the most favorable votes from the committee, and in fact the final vote count was 10 in favor and 9 opposed to option 7. With that, that concludes our brief presentation for this morning. Again, we're open to questions at this time or at any juncture between now and January, when the board will be asked, as I indicated earlier, to take an action in the month of January to identify for the superintendent what specific proposals, these or any others the board might have, that they wish to take to that public briefing and public hearing process. Ultimately, the board will be asked no later than the end of April to take a vote in open session on their final redistricting actions, and the superintendent and staff would then implement them as instructed. So again, thank you for this opportunity, and we're open to any questions you might have.
Mr. Webb.
Mr. Shaknovich, are there currently any students being bused into Tyler Heights Elementary?
Yes, sir. There's currently students being bused into Tyler as well as Georgetown East as well as Eastport. All three schools have some busing students.
Do we have any idea how many are being bused into Tyler Heights from areas other than, you said some are going to Georgetown East?
Well, all the students that are being bused to Tyler Heights are in Tyler Heights' geographic attendance pattern as it exists today. We'll be more than happy to put together an overview. Quite frequently, the board does ask for additional information, and so to the extent possible, I would be more than happy to collect any additional information type of items, such as busing information, Mr. Webb, and we can put them together in a package and share with the entire board so that you're all you have all of that information available at your disposal to review before January.
Okay. That would be great. I do know that one of the questions one of the mothers posed at the last hearing on this was why are her children from, I guess she was in the reserve of quiet waters, why we're looking at busing them when we already have children being bused to Tyler Heights. Why not direct those buses to Georgetown East rather than move the children who are within walking distance on the buses and take them to Georgetown East? So it would be helpful for us to know just what those patterns are and what those particular populations are, so we can take that into consideration.
Sure, certainly, be my pleasure.
Thank you.
Mr. Jackson.
2 questions. One, how much will Georgetown East be over capacity if we go with option 7? One of the comments that you made said that it would be over capacity. If we do, I think it's the letter A on here, which is 150 students.
Sure. Georgetown East in the 2015 year would rise up to 106%, so it would be 106% over capacity. And the issue is, obviously, as you know, you heard from the superintendent this morning, that we are advocating for an addition to be constructed at Georgetown East, and that addition has already received the favorable recommendation of the state, so it is eligible for state funding. They've already acknowledged that. We'll work with the county executive to secure the matching county funding, but that addition would not be in place, Mr. Jackson, until the beginning of the 2016 school year. So if we move Community A in advance of that addition being completed, Georgetown East would be at 106% of capacity for that 2015 school year until that addition receives its use and occupancy permits and occupied.
And thank you. And that would leave that would leave Tyler Heights Elementary School at what capacity?
It would, Tyler Heights would lower to 110% at that point in time.
Okay. it would lower Tyler Heights to 110%. Is
Yes,
what
sir.
I heard you say. So right now it's something like 117 or 120%.
Currently 137.
137. Okay, and then my second question it has to do with a plan under option 10 for Tyler Heights in 2015-2016 should we choose option 10. What's the plan for the 13 portables that exist today?
Well, again, and I'll leave you to read the committee's recommendations, but the committee made a number of recommendations to the administration. Naturally, that would be the principal, Mr. Truffer, Dr. Arlato, et cetera, regarding how some of the space utilization in Tyler Heights could be modified. Now, would that result in a reduction in the number of portables at Tyler Heights? Or no, it would not. But it would do is it could create an opportunity where more of the youngsters spend a greater or a more significant portion of their day inside of the building as opposed to outside of the building. So, for example, a lot of our schools use portables for some of their, we call them specials, right? So you can use it for pull-out sessions. You can use it for music, possibly some of these other part day segments, as opposed to, for example, a fourth grader being in that room from start to finish that entire day in that portable. So the committee made a number of recommendations that I believe the superintendent would like to have the opportunity to work with the regional associate superintendent, Mr. Truffer, and the principal of Tyler Heights to reanalyze how Tyler Heights is currently being used to create more opportunities for more students to spend a greater part of their day inside of the building as opposed to the portables.
Okay,
that's
so
what I was alluding to.
Okay, so at the end of the day, if we were to choose option 10, the current 13 portables that exist would remain. How they're utilized is a different question, but they would remain.
Again, that's subject to final determination. I mean, in all likelihood, they would remain, okay, for one additional year, right? And then they would resolve themselves in 2016 when the redistricting, or many of them would resolve themselves when the redistricting fully took place. But if it's 13 or some number plus or minus from 13 would be entirely dependent on what opportunities exist for the instructional folks to re-examine again how, on a space-by-space basis, day-by-day, period-by-period, how are they using Tyler Heights and what opportunities exist to use it differently, possibly this upcoming August, as we do today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Arlato.
Thank you. Ms. Sheknovich, would you just give us a sort of a quick outline about the future of redistricting for Annapolis? This was limited in scope, as you alluded to in the beginning, and the committee knew well and undertook that scope, of which I'm very, very appreciative of all their time and energies. But there is more to come, if you will. We've got construction of a number of schools, +2 on the plan coming up in both Tyler and Hillsmere. So would you talk a little bit about the future of why this limited scope and sort of where we're headed in the future for redistricting for the cluster?
Sure. As the Board of Education knows, for those of you that spent some quality years with me here already, it is not other than readily obvious that the schools in the city of Annapolis have not really received the focus and attention that they needed in terms of capital upgrades, that being the aged infrastructure of some of our buildings in the city, as well as some of the capacity adjustments. That was identified clearly by the MGT study that was undertaken and delivered here in 2006. And as part of that study, they made a number of recommendations to prioritize and triage the Annapolis feeder district, as they did elsewhere, but a lot of emphasis. In fact, I think mathematically, the most number of projects that were identified by the MGT body of work originally, in fact, were to take place in the city of Annapolis. So specifically, we just recently completed the renovation and expansion of Annapolis Elementary School. You know, we currently today, as we speak, have underway the renovation and expansion of West Annapolis and Rolling Knolls Elementary Schools and Mills Parole Elementary School. Germantown Elementary School was a recommendation of the MGT, and that has been completed and occupied just like Annapolis. But importantly, we still have two very critical elements ahead of us, and that is a critical need to have both Tyler Heights and Hillsmere not only comprehensively renovated and or replaced, but expanded to take care of those communities. Those communities are all growing. There is still not as much in Tyler Heights, but certainly in Hillsmere, there's still some land that's prone to development. And we know that the adequate public facility ordinance that helps us manage some of that growth in the county is not as robust in the city of Annapolis. So we know that we're going to be experiencing further enrollment growth in Annapolis. And that the idea is that, and we've been very transparent, the superintendent was incredibly forthright, that our abilities to undertake a redistricting at this point in time has to be narrowly focused and strategic, knowing that when we finalize the build out of our Annapolis plan, and by the way, I'm focusing on elementary school so much today, that I neglected to say that Bates Middle School is also in our capital plan. So we know that when we are done with the body of work in Annapolis, we just had the addition put on Annapolis High School as well, that we are going to have to do a side-to-side, top-to-bottom, stem-to-stern reanalysis of the entire Annapolis feeder district. And I'll throw in just one other complicating factor, one that Mr. Jackson is acutely aware of, is that we also have children on the north side of the Severn River attending Annapolis as well, and that part of the capital improvement plan also has, as you know, we completed the feasibility study for Arnold recently. And so when we take a look at the comprehensive approach to how to deal with Annapolis, Mr. Jackson, we'd also like to take a look at the north side of the river, the Navy Station Annapolis component, to see where they would be situated, whether Annapolis Elementary would continue to be a suitable location for them, or possibly we would like to explore, once Arnold Elementary School was finally completed, they would go to Arnold. And I only mentioned that to say that the children now on the north side of the river, although they come to Annapolis Elementary School for their elementary years, they don't stay a part of the Annapolis feeder district. They then return to the Broadneck community for middle and high school. And really that split articulation pattern obviously gives us some concern. We know that we've received concerns from some of the enlisted and Navy community on the north side of the Severn River. So part and parcel with that comprehensive redistricting that I spoke to earlier in Annapolis would actually be a little bit larger and would actually take a look at how do we deal with the naval station that's adjacent to Greensbury Point on the north side. So Dr. Arlotto, that would be the vision, is to continue to work with the state and county funding partners just like we have to date, secure the funding necessary and the requisite approvals to aggressively begin undertaking the renovation, expansion, and or replacement of those remaining two schools, plus Arnold, to the point that I raised for Mr. Jackson. And then at that time, the recommendation would be to re-impanel a new redistricting committee that will be charged with a much more in-depth, a much more elaborate, and a much more robust analysis of the entire Annapolis NEC community. Does that address your concern, Dr. Arlotto? Sure.
Mr. Jackson.
Thank you. Some of that dialogue allowed me to think about a question that I wanted to follow up on. Could 90 students out of the Area A on the map, which is 150 students as is, if you just take the cookie cutter piece of that Area A, but could 90 of those students be carved out of the 150 students, so we're not going so far over capacity, but we're not also leaving students in Tyler Heights for another year, and we're utilizing the space in Georgetown East next year? Do you understand my question?
Yes, sir. So There's 150 students currently that that come to us from the reserve at Quiet Waters. It is a contiguous multi-unit apartment complex. So could possibly you go into an existing contiguous neighborhood, into an apartment complex, and say, okay, these 3 buildings or these 4 buildings no longer are part of your community. They go over here, and the other 7 buildings continue to stay. That gets a little clunky at times. Typically when we through the redistricting or rezoning process, if we're going to move, the community, we'll move the entire. So it's a multi-unit apartment complex. I believe it's on the order of 10-ish buildings. Again, it's certainly theoretically possible, but it gets very difficult to decide which 3 buildings you're going to move, which 4 buildings you're going to move, and it's only going to be for a year, and then the rest of the buildings will move next year. And so it is possible, but it creates some communication, some logistical challenges, and I think would cause a level of angst and disruption within neighborhood A that possibly could be avoided.
Thank you.
Okay, I have 4 cards from the public. Tom Boynton, Eric DeVito, Fred Lautenschlager, and Michael Drummond.
Good morning. My name's Tom Boynton. Should I start? I'm sorry. I was on the redistricting committee. I was a representative from Tyler Heights. And first of all, no one from our community wants to move our kids because we love our school. We really do. And I came to the fight, the redistricting, hoping to trying to keep as many kids as we could. But it's not going to happen. We're not going to get a new school anytime soon. That's been made clear to me. But we're busting at the seams. We're at 137% right now. Next year, nothing gets done. We're at 140, 145%. So the other thing is, what just got presented was that somewhere in the literature or somewhere someone told us that all our redistricting efforts were going to happen in 2016. I never heard that from a single person who was, representing the school system, that anything we were going to decide upon was only going to happen in 2016. We thought we were free and clear to try and move kids next year. And that's why I'm the one who came up with Proposal 7. And Dr. Sharika Crawford, she teaches at the Naval Academy, and I carried a lot of water trying to get the committee to agree to anything, much less any proposal. And we looked at things very clearly, thought we could move kids next year, because none of what I've heard today with respect, anyone other than Mr. Jackson has been worried about Tyler Heights next year. Okay? And I'm worried about Tyler Heights next year because my daughter is going to go into 3rd grade, and she's going to be stuck in one of those trailers out there. The trailers for the 3rd graders are 100 yards from the nearest store. We've had kids not make it to the bathroom in time and wet themselves. It's a really untenable situation. We had to sit there on the committee and listen to outrageous claims from our friends from Eastport about how crowded they were, equally crowded, and how their school was overrun. And they ignored the fact that their entire school's population of 270 kids sits outside every day in trailers at our school. Every day. And Dr. Arlotto, I loved your parable about the blueberries. And we got a lot of blueberries at our school. And they're sitting on the loading dock right now. And we have to stick them out into leaky crates every day. And it's not good. In the Robert Kennedy quote about, let's not think about what we can't do, let's think about what we can do, So I did a lot of work on the committee, and Sharika and I did a lot of work on the committee to try and bring it so that some relief could happen next year. some relief could happen next year at Tyler Heights. So it looks like I have some more work to do trying to convince everybody up there. And I'm going to keep fighting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. DeVito.
Thank you. My name is Eric DeVito. I'm here with Fred Lautenschlager to my left and Mike of the Knights of Columbus, and Mike Drummond next to Fred from the Arundel Lodge. We are here today speaking directly with regard to the Knights of Columbus, or the Admiral Cochran Drive redistricting, which was item 2. And the superintendent's recommendation, the charge that was given to the committee was to look at the Knights of Columbus property and another existing community, Admiral's View, and move it from the South River feeder system, where it is now, to the Annapolis High School feeder system. We support the move to the Annapolis High School system. The committee and Dr. Arlotto's recommendation would keep it where it is, and we're basically here to ask you to reconsider that. And we know there'll be a lot more details in January to get into some of these details. There were things that the committee looked at. We understand, but there are other factors that we believe the board should take into consideration. I mean, these are two charitable organizations, and they can give you their details of what they do and their missions. And when Dr. Arlotto was speaking before about, you know, your mission to helping families and kids, that's exactly what they do. And by redistricting them, that can help them along in their mission, which they will explain. Some of the nuances that we believe may not have been fully understood at the committee level this is on the boundary line. Admiral Cochran Drive, for those of you who don't know where the property is, it's at the end of Admiral Cochran Drive, right where it intersects with Route 2. And Admiral Cochran Drive is the boundary line. And for those of us in Anne Arundel County, we know Admiral Cochran Drive has not been there forever. It's a relatively new road in this county. And it has, in essence, created this problem because that's been used as the boundary line. And anytime you do that, there's always going to be properties on one side or the other. And what we're asking you to do is basically flip the property to the other side of the line. And in fact, a portion of their property is on the Annapolis High School side of the line, and which is further compounding this. Your busing system goes up and down Admiral Cochran Drive now as it is, so this would not affect it. The buses for both the South River and the Annapolis feeder systems go up and down Admiral Cochran Drive, so this would not impact that. And what it has done is it is causing an impact to their development plans, and Fred can explain it, that is causing the group a hardship, and that's why we're asking you really to take another look at it, a harder look at it. We'll give you the details, as I say, in January to hopefully try and flip this to the Annapolis feeder system. The last point is we understand that there was some concern because Admiral's View is an existing community, and I believe there is one student that is in the South River feeder system, I believe either at Edgewater or Central. But a possibility would be to leave Admiral's View where it is and just take the Knights of Columbus property over to the Annapolis feeder system, if that is a concern of the board, because it can be the properties aren't technically contiguous, they're close by, but carving out Knights of Columbus separate and distinct from that existing community, probably it would not affect you, like I said, with the busing or really any other practical purpose. And if that's the holdup, we'd ask you to consider that altered recommendation. Thank you.
Superintendent, members of the board, my name is Fred Lautenschlager. I'm a member of the Knights of Columbus of Annapolis. I'm also the president of the Columbus Club, which is a subset corporation of the Knights of Columbus that owns and operates property that would belong to the chapter. We have purchased property on Bestgate Road adjacent to St. John Newman Church to build a new facility to house our activities. The reason we've done that is because we've been pressed largely by government, if you will. You put Admiral Cochran Drive through our property. It eliminated some of the activities that we formerly had, and it also split our property. Some of it is in the Annapolis feeder system on the other side of the road. And what we've had to do is we hope that we get proper zoning so we could sell our property and move on to a new location. But because of the limitations on new development, we've been forced to carry a note on the new property, and we're expending substantial sums of money to pay the interest costs on that, money that we could be using in the community. Many of our activities support essentially what you do. We have a scholarship committee and a scholarship program that is ongoing. We give substantial sums of money out in scholarships to students in the area. A point in fact is that in 2009 we celebrated our 100th anniversary in the community. We gave $100,000 to organizations within the community just to indicate who we are and what we're all about. On one occasion, if you recall, former county executive said that he was no longer going to fund certain not-for-profit activities, and there was a big hue and cry by these organizations. So I contacted him and told him to send those organizations to us, and we would review their requests, and perhaps we could be of some assistance, some help. That's the type of things that we do, and the activities of our operation are being sorely limited by our being unable to move ahead with our new property, and the expense has just been, it's been very difficult for us. I look back at our records for 100 years, and I don't see a time where we've had so much difficulty, and it's largely, to use a word, bureaucratic and government influenced. And we ask you to reconsider and to assist the Knights of Columbus with our mission to do good for students and other members of the community. Thank you for your attention.
Good morning or good afternoon. I've lost track of time. Thank you very much for this opportunity to visit with you today. I deeply appreciate the success that the Anne Arundel Public County school system has had in supporting families and the children who depend upon your efforts. Arundel Lodge is a private nonprofit organization. It provides behavioral, mental health, substance abuse services, supports people in their recovery, and promotes and helps them engage in and develop a meaningful life in the community. We have a wide variety of services. We have an outpatient clinic that now currently serves over 1,500 people per year. We have a day program whose average daily attendance is over 100. We have 110 people living in residential placements in 32 homes. We have a supported employment program to help them return to work. Probably of most interest to the school system is that next week we're beginning to redesign part of our building to establish a children and adolescents treatment program, outpatient clinic, that will provide them a separate entrance into our facility, a separate waiting room, a separate area for counseling and play therapy services. The reason why we came to support this project is because when I met with Koch Development, they were willing to put in a public road from Admiral Cochrane to our parking lot area. And we had been in discussion with the city for quite some time. They provide a bus stop at the end of Admiral Cochrane, and many of our clients take that bus and then cross the Knights of Columbus property to our property, which is contiguous with, right next to the Knights of Columbus. We've always wanted, and the city of Annapolis has also felt like it would be more desirable if that bus stop could be at our building. The problem has been that it needs to get to our property from Admiral Cochrane and then back to Admiral Cochrane to continue its route. Anyway, they have been supportive of this project, and I recontacted the acting director of the Department of Transportation, who said that should the Koch development project go through as the conceptual plans indicate, then that would be possible. I know that our programs work closely with Board of Ed programs. We have a partnership with Georgetown East right now, and with our clinic services, we would hope to expand our capacity and our ability to support you in your educational mission. Thank you very much.
Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, ma'am. I normally don't ask a question, but just for clarification, sir, Knights of Columbus, I drive by it all the time because I live in South County, down Route 2. You mentioned you're trying to rezone the property so that you can sell it. What are you trying to rezone it to?
Well, it was at one time zoned residential to R2 for 2 dwelling units per acre. We attempted in the past to get it zoned commercial simply because of the traffic that was around. No one really wanted to live where 67,000 cars went past your front door every day. We could not get support to get that done. Even though it was part of a small growth plan, it was zoned commercial, there apparently was opposition from Gingerville and the former county executive listened to them and put a stop to it. Then it was subsequently compromised to resident R10, 10 dwelling units. That's what it currently is right now, and that, under that circumstance, it was sold for townhouse development. About 50 dwelling units, I understand, is proposed for there.
Thank you. Do you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to add, there's no pending rezoning. The zoning is in place now. The development that we're talking about is a by right zone that's basically just being held up for the school issue. There's no other rezoning that has to occur right now for this to go forward.
So it would stay R10?
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, ma'am.
Is there any other public comment on this item? Okay, thank you.
If anyone wants to ask me any questions, like privately, Scott Schuler has my email and my phone number. Thank you so much.
Okay. And just to clarify, we anticipate having 1 or 2 public briefings on this, whatever the board ends up proposing, in February, and then the public hearing at the board probably the first week of March. The next item on the agenda is item 5.04. Non-discrimination policy AC. This is a second reading and an information item only. We had no public comments received during the 30-day posting on the website, correct?
That's correct.
Is there any board comment or questions on this item? Mr. Webb.
Only that that policy, I'd like to see that apply to any organization that leases or uses any of our facilities, that they adhere to the same policies.
Okay, we'll take a look at that. So you're saying any, I guess, vendors and
Any vendor or organization using any of our properties, any of the school's properties.
okay, I understand, and this is well placed for that because it's your overarching policy for every piece of business that you do.
Right.
Yep, we can.
Thanks.
Is there any public comment on item 5.04? Okay. The next item on the agenda is 5.05, non-discrimination and anti-harassment personnel policy GAGG. This is also a second reading information item with no public comments received during the 30-day posting. Is there any board comment? Is there any public comment on 5.05? Okay. Item 5.06, employee complaints policy GAHH, second reading information item. No public comments during the 30-day posting on the website. Is there any board comment or questions? Any public comment? Okay. Item 5.07, naming facilities policy EG. This is a first reading. And an information item, and we have a staff presentation.
The Office of the Superintendent, the Chief Operating Officer, the Office of School and Family Partnerships, and the Office of School Performance brings policy EG, naming of facilities, to you for first reading. This policy was last updated November 20th, 1989. A new regulation is provided to provide a scripted process for naming or renaming schools, facilities, or significant elements or portions of other schools and other facilities. The policy and regulation was vetted through many groups, including the CAC, PTA, and PIAC. The feedback that we received from these groups was incorporated into the regulation. This policy will be posted for 30 days on our website for public comment, and we will answer any questions you have related to this policy and regulation.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes, ma'am. I don't really have a question. I just really have a comment. Over on the regulation, we kind of had some significant discussion on page 2 relative to schools shall not be named after individuals, groups of people, organizations. This provision does not apply to schools that were named after individuals, groups of people, or organizations prior to the issuance of this regulation. It will be my belief, and I'll take this all the way through third reading, but I won't be supporting the policy and regulation. So I believe there is room, and our student member of the board made some recommendation on some language associated with that after someone has died after a certain period of time associated with their legacy to worry about. But I understand that it is the it's the superintendent's regulation associated with that. I just won't be supporting it. Thank you, ma'am.
Is there any public comment on this item? Okay. Item 5.08, reporting child abuse, neglect, JEF policy, first reading. This is an information item as well, and there's a staff presentation.
The Division of Student Support Services and the Office of Investigations bring policy JEF, reporting child abuse, neglect, to the board for first reading. This policy was last updated May 15th, 2007. This policy and regulation is being revised to comply with updated state law that includes human trafficking in the definition of sexual abuse. The policy will be posted on our website for 30 days for public comment, and we will answer any questions you have regarding this policy and regulation.
I don't see any board questions. Is there any public comment? Okay. The next item on the agenda is item 5.09, Hebron Harmon Elementary School Stormwater Management Inspection and Maintenance Agreement. This is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action? So moved. All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation, please.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend the approval of the Hebron Harmon Elementary School Stormwater Management Inspection and Maintenance Agreement.
Is there any board discussion? Is there any public comment? We have a motion on the floor that's been properly made and seconded. All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0-0. The next item is item 5.10, Solly Elementary School abandonment of the use and common right-of-way and right-of-way dedication. This is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action? We now have an action item, or all those in favor? Now we have an action item. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation?
Yes, ma'am. I recommend the approval of the Solly Elementary School abandonment of the use in common right-of-way and right-of-way dedication.
Second. Is there any discussion? Any public comment? We have a motion on the floor that's been properly made and seconded. All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0-0. Item 5.11, Carol S. Parham Building BGE easement. This is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action?
Second.
All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation?
Yes, ma'am. I recommend the approval of the Carol S. Parham Building BGE easement.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Any public comment? We have a motion on the floor that's been properly made and seconded. All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0-0. Item 5.12, second quarter operating budget fund transfer for FY 2015. This is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action? All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation?
Yes, ma'am. I recommend the approval of the second quarter operating budget fund transfer for FY 2015 to be submitted to the County Council.
And we have a presentation?
Yes, ma'am. We do. Good afternoon. Again, Alex Shaknovich, Chief Operating Officer. It's my pleasure to present an overview of item 5.12, which is an information action item now regarding the second quarter operating budget transfer for 2015. And I'd like to walk the board through the exhibit and therefore put you in a position to ask any questions that you might have. In the overview that's before you right now, you'll see the in aggregate, we'll be asking for $44.4 million approximately to be recognized by the County Council through legislation that will be introduced on our behalf regarding a transfer. Now, I will explain why. This is probably an eye-popping number to you, and it is certainly a one-off type of exhibit that the board is not accustomed to. Traditionally, we bring to the board an item regarding second quarter transfer that's simply to recognize revenues that we've received throughout the course of the year that were unanticipated when the budget was crafted and struck in July 1st. What is unique about this transfer, if you hearken back in your memories, you'll remember that in April of 2014, the State Board of Education issued a ruling about how Anne Arundel County public school system's healthcare fund should be depicted within our budgetary documents. That State Board ruling happened after this Board of Education had already adopted its budget recommendation and moved it forward to the county executive. It happened so late in the session that County Executive Newman, county executive at that time, also could not essentially recraft the budget, and therefore the county council's budget was adopted at that time also did not essentially recognize that State Board ruling. And we had some robust discussions with all parties involved at that time, and again, given the late nature and essentially it was too late into the cycle, that we committed to the county government that when we brought, as we naturally do each and every year, our second quarter fund transfer to the Board of Education and then later through the administration to the county council, when we brought that second quarter fund transfer to adjust the FY15 budget, we would also recast our budget depiction and adjust our FY15 budget to bring it into strict accord with that State Board ruling. So that is why, and I'll show you momentarily why this second quarter transfer is much larger than you had seen in the past. So going forward through the pages, the next page will show the general fund operating budget transfer, and you'll see that there is none. So there is no additional revenue anticipated traditionally into our unrestricted general fund. Our general fund fund balance summary is on the next page. And again, this aligns with the budget presentation that you saw earlier, so I will not take any time on that page. The next page that is entitled Grant Funding, it's the page that's in front of you there, is what the board is customarily asked to entertain and act on at this time of year. So it is in the grant arena that we win grants. We win grants in the months of July and August and September, et cetera, or get grant extensions or grant continuances or funding adjustments through, again, successive grant awards. So this approximately $2.1 million is largely attributable to those grants that have come to benefit the school district, but after the budget was struck. So in order to properly account for and expend these funds, we will be asking the county government to introduce legislation to increase our appropriations authority in the restricted grant category to recognize these federal funds that are coming our way. The self-insurance fund is depicted on the next 2 pages. And again, what you'll see highlighted there is the budget revised. So just to the left of it, you'll notice that when the budget was approved, there's an empty column. And specifically, as I mentioned earlier, when the budget was approved and came into force on July 1, because of this out-of-cycle timing of the State Board's decision, that budget was not crafted, designed, or approved in a manner that comported with that April 14 decision. The column to the right, the one highlighted in yellow, does exactly that. So as we had discussed with our county funding partners, the board's budget will be adjusted midstream, and upon the action of this board and upon the action of the county administration and the county council, we're all going to be back into alignment with the State Board decision. So on a going forward basis, we won't have any of these new alignment or adjustment issues of this proportion. So with that, I conclude my remarks, and I'm open to any questions that the Board of Education might have.
I don't have any board questions. Is there any public comment? We have a motion on the floor that's been properly made and seconded. All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0-0. Item 5.13, filling of vacancies on Executive Committee of Countywide Citizen Advisory Committee. This is an action item. Mrs. Nally.
Upon approval by the board, the following named individuals will be appointed to fill the vacancies on the Countywide Citizen Advisory Committee. Edmund Barrett, Arundel Cluster Secondary Schools Representative. Karen Brossiker, Northeast Cluster Secondary Schools Representative. Marcia Turner, Meade Cluster Elementary Schools Representative. Jack Neal, Southern Cluster Secondary Schools Representative. Thomas Spangler III, At-Large Countywide Representative. Lily Odessa Ellis, At-Large Countywide Representative.
Second.
Is there any board discussion? Is there any public comment? All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0-0. Item 5.14, approval of legal services contract. This is an action item. Mrs. Nally.
I recommend that the Board of Education recommends approval of the legal services contract for a term of 3 years.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Any public comment? All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0-0. Item 6.01, the monthly financial status report. This is a review item. Is there any board comment or questions? Any public comment? Okay. Item 6.02, award of contracts. This is a review item. Is there any board comments or questions? Any public comment? Okay. I just have a couple of announcements before we move to go back into closed session. The next Board of Education meeting is Wednesday, January 7th at 10 a.m. The next Board Policy Committee meeting is Wednesday, December 17th at 8:30 a.m. The next Board Budget Committee meeting is Tuesday, January 13th at 5 p.m. in Conference Room 2B. And we will also be holding 2 public hearings on the Superintendent's FY 2016 recommended operating and capital budgets, starting sign-ups at 6 p.m. The first meeting will be Tuesday, January 6th at Old Mill High School, and Thursday, January 8th, right here in the Parham Building on Riva Road. We'll also be holding a workshop on the budget Tuesday, January 20th at 6 p.m. and the public is welcome to attend, but no public testimony will be taken. Mrs. Nally?
I would like to move that we go into a closed session to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter, to conduct collective bargaining negotiations, or consider matters that relate to the negotiations.
All those in favor? We're now in closed session, and I just want to wish everybody a happy holiday.